Joining me now in the Canberra studio, we're back to the campaign and economic policy, particularly the Finance Minister and Coalition campaign spokesman, Matthias Cormann. Thanks for your time. Labor going to go further today in terms of its economic pitch, and it is going to accept some of the savings which it's been opposed to in the upper house over the last couple of years. You would welcome that, wouldn't you?
Labor is in complete chaos today. I mean, they've been caught out about the size of their budget black hole. They've been caught out about the increase in the deficit under Labor. They've been caught out about the impact that would have on our AAA credit rating, our economy and jobs, and they're now scrambling. They're making decisions under pressure and on the run. This is no way to run a budget or economy.
But why do you say that? Because they've indicated for some time that they would be seeking to rein in, what's called middle-class welfare. They've been saying that for a while.
Well, there are $18 billion worth of savings measures that they've been opposing for years, recklessly and irresponsibly opposing for years. If they're going to support these measures that they've been opposing, why didn't they make that decision 8 weeks ago when we could have passed it through the Parliament? And Australia would be in a better position today if we could have legislated those savings 8 weeks ago. I mean, this is the only reason Labor is doing this is because they've been caught out. I mean, earlier this week, three expert economists around Australia came out and said that Labor's plan to increase the size of the deficit over the next 4 years would put Australia's AAA credit rating at risk. Now, that would make it harder to pay back Labor's debt. It would put jobs and growth at risk. And they're now scrambling.
On the AAA.
On a Friday, right? This is take out the thrush day for Labor, right? I mean, they're following the West Wing formula here. They're hoping that nobody is watching as they're trying to come clean, tidying up some of the messes that they've made.
But in terms of the AAA credit rating, is it, well, you keep pointing to Labor, but under the government, is it 100% rock solid that is not vulnerable under the government's
we've got a very clear plan. We've got a plan for jobs and growth, and we've got a sustainable path and a credible path back to surplus. And
so no way at risk.
Well, I mean, I let the credit agencies talk for themselves. But what is very clear, and three expert economists around Australia have said this unequivocally earlier this week, Labor's plan to increase the size of the deficit over the next 4 years, which they've had to fess up to earlier in the week, would put our AAA credit rating at risk. Our very responsible
but it could already be at risk. That's the point.
Well,
under your government.
And Labor is out there spending like drunken sailors, making unfunded spending promise after unfunded spending promise without being able to pay for it. They've been caught out, and what we're seeing at the moment is just more Labor chaos and dysfunction. And this is not the way to run an economy. It's not the way to run a budget.
The reason I'm asking is because you keep saying this about Labor. They're putting at risk the AAA credit rating. Do you accept that it is already potentially at risk?
Well, our plan is there for all to see, and all of the credit agencies have been making statements that, in relation to the AAA credit rating for Australia in recent times, supporting it. Our plan is there for all to see. We've got a believable and credible path back to surplus. We've made decisions in government to improve the budget bottom line, to put our budget on a stronger, more sustainable foundation for the future. Labor has fought us every step of the way, and Labor has been opposing for years now a whole series of savings measures that they're now suggesting they might support. Now, I mean, they've walked away from their past promise to bring back the school kids bonus. They've walked away from their past promise to reverse changes that we had to make to pension asset test arrangements. And today we're going to see more of that same.
What about your plan for company tax cuts? Because we've seen various analysis around in recent days and weeks about as to the $50 billion cost, or $48.2 billion across 10 years. How do you fund that? It's $8 billion a year. How do you fund that? Where's it coming from?
Well, the budget position makes very clear that it is funded not just over the forward estimates, but over the medium term.
But how? Where's it coming from?
We are funding it through a crackdown on tax avoidance and by better targeting of tax concessions. I mean, that is, if you look at the budget paper, it will show you that the decisions that we've made on the policy front, the policy decisions that we've made actually improve the budget bottom line by $1.7 billion over the forward estimates. So we are paying for all of our promises over the forward estimates. And if you look at the medium term...
But some are saying that, you talk about the multinationals, but some of the critique is that you are going to rely on multinationals essentially to bring their earnings back to Australia because you've lowered the tax rate. Is that the assumption that's been made?
Well, we have a whole series of measures in the budget to ensure that businesses generating profits in Australia pay their fair share of tax in Australia. That is quite right. I mean, that is not an assumption. I mean, there's a whole range of specific measures that we're taking to crack down on tax avoidance and to ensure that tax concessions are better targeted. But the more important point I was going to make about the medium term is that if you look at our budget projections, we are projected to get back into surplus in 2020-21 and to remain in surplus for the whole period of the medium term. So that means that our more competitive business tax rates, which will help to boost investment, which will help to boost productivity, which will help to boost growth, and which Dr. Ken Henry, the former Treasury Secretary, said would principally benefit workers. That is fully funded, not only over the four
What do you say to the criticism that it's
medium term as well?
That some of the assumptions are heroic in terms of your assumption that the multinationals are simply going to say, OK, they've lowered the tax rate, we'll stop. Well, if it's to avoid tax.
I don't accept them at all because, our budget forecast and all of the revenue estimates were given the independent tick of approval by the Secretaries of Treasury and Finance. That is why we have a pre-election economic and fiscal outlook in the lead up to an election under our chart of budget honesty. The government completely complied with all of the requirements. The Secretaries of Treasury and Finance endorsed all of the assumptions and the forecasts and the methodology that we used because the numbers that they signed off on were the same numbers.
Finally, the Council of Small Business giving the Greens quite a compliment this morning, critical of Labor, but should that be that much of a surprise given small business are a traditional core constituency of the Liberal Party?
Well, I mean, it's quite extraordinary that the small business stakeholders are now suggesting that the Greens are better for small business than Labor. I mean, what it shows is that Labor under Bill Shorten has lost its way. I mean, clearly, when you've got a small business constituency coming out to say that Labor is even worse than the Greens when it comes to small business, surely even the last Labor supporter would have to accept that under Bill Shorten, the Labor Party seriously has lost its way.
Matthias Cormann, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Always good to talk to you.